The room erupted with applause. Crystal glasses clinked together. Cameras flashed from every corner of the ballroom. My wife's smile lit up the stage brighter than the company logo behind her. Our success wouldn't have been possible without someone very special. My hands tightened around the untouched glass of sparkling water. For one foolish second, I believed she meant me. Instead, Olivia stretched out her arm toward Ryan Brooks. There he is. The crowd turned. Ryan walked onto the stage with the easy confidence of someone who already knew the moment belonged to him. Our brilliant executive consultant. More applause. Olivia laughed softly as she accepted another bouquet from the board. Ryan came in when this company needed fresh vision. Fresh vision. The words echoed through my head. Every strategy she praised had started on the dining table in our kitchen. Every expansion plan, every pricing model, every client recovery, every emergency meeting. I remember nights when she fell asleep over financial reports while I stayed awake until sunrise rewriting proposals that eventually won $1 million contracts. I never wanted credit. Watching her dream become real had always felt enough. Until tonight, a man standing beside me leaned closer. So you're on Olivia's operations team? I forced a smile. Something like that. He nodded toward the stage. Ryan is incredible. They say he completely changed the company. My throat felt dry. I've heard that. No anger escaped my voice. Just exhaustion. The applause finally faded. Ryan accepted a Crystal Award before wrapping Olivia in a quick hug. She smiled at him the way she used to smile at me after we solved impossible problems together. That smile hadn't reached our home in months. The celebration continued around me. Music grew louder. People laughed. Servers walked between expensive tables carrying trays of food. Nobody seemed interested in eating. I drifted toward the balcony for fresh air. Cold wind brushed across my face. A familiar pair of heels clicked behind me. Ethan. Olivia stepped outside while checking another message on her phone. You disappeared. I needed a minute. You should mingle. I tried. Her attention stayed on the screen. These investors flew across the country. I know. A short silence settled between us. Not awkward. Not angry. Just empty. She finally slipped the phone into her pocket. Ryan handled the presentation perfectly. I'm glad it worked. You sound upset. Do I? Her eyebrows pulled together. This isn't the night for negativity. I almost laughed. Negativity. That was what my disappointment had become. A scheduling problem. An inconvenience. I'll head home. So early, you've got everyone here who matters. The words slipped out before I could stop them. She stared for a second. Then another notification lit her screen. Duty called. Or maybe ambition did. We'll talk tomorrow. Tomorrow. The same promise I'd heard for weeks. She walked back inside before I answered. The balcony suddenly felt much colder. The drive home lasted 20 minutes. Every traffic light gave me another excuse to sit still. Another excuse not to walk into a house that no longer felt like mine. The front door opened to darkness. Only the dining room lamp remained on. Dinner waited exactly where I'd left it 3 hours earlier. 2 plates, 2 glasses, 2 candles, 1 cold meal. I touched the edge of Olivia's plate. Stone cold. She hadn't planned to come home. She simply forgot to tell me. Again, my phone rested beside the salt shaker. 1 unread message. Dinner's ready. Drive safely. Sent 3 hours ago. Read by no one. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then I locked it. The silence inside the house sounded heavier than the music from the ballroom. I loosened my tie and sank into a chair. The chair across from me stayed empty. That empty seat used to hold laughter. Late-night brainstorming. Pizza boxes. Coffee cups. Dreams too big for our tiny apartment. Back then, Olivia would spread papers across the table. What do you think? I'd grab a pen. Let's fix this together. We always did. Those memories felt like someone else's life now. A soft vibration broke my thoughts. Grace, you survived the party? A tired smile crossed my face. Barely. You don't sound okay. I'm just tired. She didn't rush to fill the silence. Grace never forced words out of people. You built that company with her. I know. Does she remember? I looked toward the untouched dinner. I don't think she sees me anymore. Another pause. Then her quiet voice. People don't always notice the foundation until the walls begin to crack. I don't want the walls to crack. No, you wanted a home. The call ended a minute later. She hadn't tried to cheer me up. She hadn't blamed Olivia. Some truths didn't need decoration. They only needed room to breathe. Near midnight, headlights crossed the living room window. Olivia was finally home. Keys jingled. The front door opened. She froze after seeing the untouched table. Oh, her eyes moved from the cold food to me. You waited. I always do. A shadow of guilt crossed her face before another notification buzzed. She glanced at out of habit. Work had become faster than emotion. I'm exhausted. I can see that. You should have eaten. I wasn't hungry anymore. She walked over and touched my shoulder. The gesture lasted barely a second before disappearing. I have an early meeting. Of course. She carried her laptop upstairs. No kiss. No conversation. No question about how my evening went. Just another workday ending. Except it wasn't work that hurt. It was realizing I had become invisible inside my own marriage. I cleaned the table alone, washed 2 untouched plates, blew out the candles. Their thin lines of smoke curled toward the ceiling before fading away. Just like us. I couldn't bring myself to sleep beside an empty space that no longer felt temporary. A blanket and pillow landed on the couch. The house creaked quietly around me. My phone battery had nearly died. Olivia's laptop sat open on the coffee table beside its charger. I reached for the cable. The screen lit up. Her email inbox filled the display. I wasn't trying to read anything. I only meant to close it. Then one subject line caught my eye. Excellent strategy, Ryan. You saved us again. My hand froze. I opened the message. Attached beneath her thank you note sat a presentation. Every page, every chart, every recommendation. I knew them because I had written every single one weeks earlier. Ryan's name covered the title page. Mine appeared nowhere. Another email waited underneath. Brilliant work. Clients loved your recovery plan. Another attachment. Another document I had created. Another thank you sent to someone else. The room suddenly felt too small. I leaned back against the couch, unable to look away from the screen. I had spent years believing love meant giving without counting the cost. Tonight, I finally saw the bill. Morning arrived without peace. The laptop still sat on the coffee table where I had left it. Those emails hadn't disappeared overnight. Ryan's name still covered work that had come from my hands, and Olivia's praise still belonged to someone else. I closed the screen carefully. Anger wanted me to storm upstairs. Pain wanted me to demand answers. Something deeper told me to stay quiet. Not because she deserved my silence. Because I deserved the truth before making the biggest decision of my life. Olivia hurried through the kitchen while fastening her watch. You woke up early. I never really slept. She poured coffee into a travel mug. Big meeting today. I know. Her eyes drifted toward the dining table. My wedding ring still rested beside the cold candle from last night. You forgot this. I didn't. She paused for a second. You should wear it. I'll think about it. Her phone vibrated. Ryan's name flashed across the screen. She answered before taking another sip. I'm leaving now. A short laugh escaped her lips. I'll be there in 20. The call ended. She grabbed her keys. Don't wait for dinner tonight. The front door closed. That sentence stayed inside the house long after she was gone. I opened an old storage box in my office. Folders covered in dust filled the bottom. Client proposals, marketing plans, expansion strategies. Every document carried dates from years before Ryan had ever joined the company. Each page reminded me of another late night beside Olivia. She used to lean against my shoulder. What would I do without you? Back then, she meant every word. Now, those memories felt like letters written to another man. I scanned every important file into my computer. Not for revenge. For protection. If the truth ever mattered, I wanted proof. My phone buzzed around noon. Grace. Coffee. I could use one. 20 minutes later, I walked into our favorite cafe. She was already waiting by the window. One glance across the table was enough. You've made your decision. Not completely, but you're getting close. The waitress placed 2 coffees between us before walking away. Grace wrapped both hands around her cup. Tell me. I slid my tablet across the table. She read the emails quietly. One page, then another, then another. Her expression never changed. Only her breathing slowed. They erased you. Looks that way. No. She pushed the tablet back. They tried to erase you. The difference landed harder than I expected. You still exist, Ethan. I don't feel like it. Her voice softened. You spent years building someone else's dream. I loved her. I know. You would have done the same. Grace smiled sadly. No. That answer surprised me. I would have loved someone without disappearing inside their life. The word stayed with me. Maybe sacrifice and love had never meant the same thing. Maybe I had confused them. That afternoon, I stopped near the company's headquarters. Not to go inside, just to watch. Employees hurried through the entrance, carrying laptops and coffee cups. My phone buzzed again. An email from Olivia. Executive strategy meeting, attendance updated. Curious, I opened the attachment. My name had been removed. Ryan now appeared beside Olivia as the lead strategist. No explanation, no conversation, just deletion. A security guard recognized me as I stood outside. Morning, Mr. Carter. Morning. You heading in? Not today. Everyone's already upstairs. I nodded and walked away. Nobody stopped me. The building I had helped create no longer had a place for me. That evening, Olivia returned home later than usual. She tossed her purse onto the sofa. You missed another meeting. I wasn't invited. She frowned. What are you talking about? The attendance list changed. Oh, she hesitated. Ryan thought it would be easier if the leadership team stayed smaller. And you agreed. It wasn't personal. I almost smiled. Everything personal eventually became business. Everything business somehow became more important than us. She opened the refrigerator. We're out of milk. I didn't go shopping. You usually do. I was busy. Doing what? Remembering who I used to be. She stared at me, confused. I don't understand. I know. She closed the refrigerator door a little harder than necessary. You're acting strange. I'm acting honest. Another uncomfortable pause settled between us. She rubbed her forehead. I don't have energy for this tonight. Neither did I. But I had carried our marriage alone for too long. The next few days passed quietly. Too quietly. I organized documents, copied old emails, saved handwritten notes from meetings. Every file reminded me that my fingerprints covered nearly every success the company celebrated. Meanwhile, Olivia became even busier. More dinners missed, more late-night meetings, more conversations ending before they truly began. She mistook my silence for surrender. She believed I would always stay. Maybe I had taught her that lesson. Friday evening arrived with heavy rain. I stood inside our bedroom, holding a single suitcase. Funny how an entire marriage could fit into one piece of luggage. A few shirts, a jacket, family photos that belonged to me. My father's old watch. Nothing else felt worth taking. The framed wedding picture still hung above the dresser. We looked so young, so certain. I lifted it from the wall. Behind it remained a lighter square where sunlight had never reached. Even the wall remembered us better than we remembered each other. The picture slipped carefully into the suitcase. Not because I wanted to keep the marriage alive, because I wanted proof that it had once been real. Downstairs, another dinner waited untouched. I cooked anyway. Habit is difficult to break. Steam rose from 2 plates before slowly fading. 9 o'clock. No Olivia. 10 o'clock. Nothing. My phone remained silent. Finally, headlights appeared outside. She walked in talking on Bluetooth. I'll review the numbers tomorrow. A brief laugh. No, Ryan, don't worry about it. The call ended. She noticed the suitcase beside the front door. Business trip? No. Her eyes moved across the room. The missing wedding photo. The empty wall. The packed luggage. Then the ring. It rested beside her untouched plate. Ethan. I didn't interrupt. She walked closer. What is this? My answer. To what? Everything. Her fingers reached toward the ring, but stopped halfway. You're leaving? A slow breath escaped me. I've been gone for a long time. This is because of those emails. It's because I stopped recognizing the man in this house. We can talk. We had months. I've just been busy. I know. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. No shouting. No insults. Only truth. She searched my face, waiting for the version of me that always gave one more chance. That man was still there. He was simply too tired to keep sacrificing himself. I'll come back early tomorrow. You don't have to. I'll fix this. You can't fix something you never noticed breaking. The room grew painfully quiet. Not empty, just full of everything we should have said long ago. I picked up the suitcase. She didn't block the door, didn't grab my hand, didn't ask me to stay. Maybe she believed I needed time. Maybe she believed I would return by Sunday. Maybe she still couldn't imagine life without someone quietly holding everything together behind the scenes. The front door closed gently behind me. No dramatic goodbye, no broken dishes, just footsteps fading into the rainy night. 3 days later, my phone rang while I unpacked boxes in a small apartment. Daniel Foster's name appeared on the screen. One of the company's oldest clients. Ethan, tell me something. I'm listening. Did you leave the company? I did. A long breath came through the speaker. That explains today's meeting. What happened? They sent Ryan. And I canceled the contract. My hand stopped folding a shirt. Cancel? I signed with that company because I trusted your judgment. Without you, I don't see the same business. Another pause. I hope you understand. I do. The call ended. I stared out the apartment window as rain rolled across the glass. Olivia still believed I would come home. She didn't know the strongest foundation beneath her company had already walked away, and the cracks had finally begun to show. The first client walked into my tiny office carrying nothing but a notebook and years of trust. The room wasn't impressive. Plain walls, second-hand furniture, a coffee machine that groaned louder than it worked. Still, Daniel Foster smiled as if he had stepped into the headquarters of a billion-dollar company. He looked around, then back at me. So this is your new beginning. It isn't much. It doesn't need to be. He pulled out a chair. I came because you're here. Those 6 words carried more value than every award hanging in Olivia's office. I poured 2 cups of coffee. Daniel opened his notebook. No fancy presentation. I smiled. You never liked those. I liked honest answers. You'll still get them. He leaned back with a quiet laugh. That's exactly why I canceled my contract. You didn't have to. I know. You've taken a risk. I invested in people long before I invested in companies. The conversation moved naturally after that. Problems, goals, market changes, new ideas. It felt familiar, not because of the business, because someone finally listened when I spoke. By the time Daniel stood to leave, he reached across the desk. I've worked with plenty of consultants. Our handshake tightened, but I've only trusted one strategist. The office felt a little bigger after he walked out. Not because the walls had changed, because I finally remember my own value. Grace arrived later that afternoon, carrying 2 paper bags. I brought lunch. You've already done enough. She placed a sandwich in front of me. You'll need energy if you're planning to rebuild your career. My career. The words almost sounded strange. For years, I had only thought about Olivia's future. Mine had quietly disappeared somewhere along the way. Grace noticed the business license lying on my desk. She picked it up carefully. Carter Strategic Consulting. You think the name works? It tells the truth. No flashy slogan. She grinned. You've never needed one. That simple answer made me laugh for the first time in weeks. Not because life had suddenly become easy, because hope had quietly returned. The days became busy. Daniel introduced me to another client. That client recommended someone else. Small meetings filled my calendar. Every conversation ended the same way. I've heard good things about you. Those words surprised me. I had spent years believing nobody knew my work. They did. They simply never knew my name. Across town, another story was beginning. I wasn't inside Olivia's office anymore. Still, news traveled quickly. Employees I once worked beside occasionally called. Not to gossip, just to check on me. One former manager lowered his voice during a phone call. Things aren't going well. What happened? Ryan pushed through a new expansion plan. I already knew which one, because it wasn't mine. And it failed. A slow breath came through the phone. We lost 2 major accounts this week. The call ended before either of us said anything else. I placed my phone on the desk. Success had started changing direction. Not because I wanted revenge, because shortcuts eventually reached their destination. Meanwhile, my old inbox continued receiving forwarded messages. Some came from former coworkers. Others came from clients. One email caught my attention. The subject line read, "Who actually built your company?" I didn't open it. Curiosity wasn't as important anymore. My focus stayed on building something new. Still, the question lingered in my mind. Maybe other people had started asking the same thing. Several evenings later, Grace stopped by my office after work. She noticed me staring out the window. "Long day. A good one. You don't sound convinced." "I keep expecting someone to wake me up." She folded her arms. "What scares you? Losing everything again." Her smile faded. "Ethan, you already lost everything once." She walked toward the window. "The difference is this time you're standing." Those words settled quietly inside me. She wasn't trying to make me forget Olivia. She was reminding me not to forget myself. Around the same time, Olivia sat alone in the conference room where I had once spent countless nights. I knew because she called me. The phone vibrated across my desk. Her name filled the screen. I watched it ring until it stopped. A message appeared moments later. "Can we talk?" My thumb hovered above the keyboard. Nothing came. The message stayed unanswered, just like mine had. The next morning, another voicemail arrived. Her voice sounded tired. "Ethan, something strange is happening." A pause. "Clients keep mentioning your name." Another pause. "I don't understand." The recording ended. I didn't delete it. I simply returned to work. Some answers could not be explained over the phone. They had to be discovered. Inside Olivia's company, that discovery had already begun. Another former co-worker visited my office. He carried a cardboard box filled with old project folders. "I thought these belonged to you." I opened the first file. My handwriting covered nearly every page. Business plans, emergency recovery strategies, long-term expansion models. Every document carried dates from years before Ryan joined the company. He rubbed the back of his neck. "The boss has been reviewing old records. And she's asking questions." "What kind?" He hesitated. "Who actually wrote all this?" The room grew quiet. Not painfully, just thoughtfully. Eventually he smiled. "I always knew. You never said anything. You never wanted credit." He glanced toward the folders. Maybe that's why people forgot. After he left, I sat there for several minutes, not blaming anyone, including myself. If you spend years hiding in the shadows, people eventually stop noticing you're there. That evening, Olivia finally opened old email archives. I knew because another message arrived. Only one sentence. "Were these really your ideas?" Attached beneath, it was one of my earliest strategy presentations. The file still carried my original notes, my comments, my revisions, my name. She had found the truth herself, not through an argument, not through accusations, through forgotten evidence she had never bothered to read before. One unread message still remained inside our old conversation, the one I had sent on the night of the celebration. "Dinner's ready. Drive safely." She never answered it. Now it sat between us like a memory frozen in time. A simple message, a simple act of love, ignored when it mattered, impossible to change afterward. Business continued growing. Slowly. Honestly, every new client came because someone trusted my work, not because they recognized my face. That mattered more than any title. One afternoon, Daniel stopped by without an appointment. He carried a folder sealed inside a large envelope. "You've got another visitor." "Who?" He smiled toward the entrance. "Someone who's been looking for you." A woman in her 60s stepped inside, wearing a navy suit. "Margaret, my late father's attorney." She greeted me with a warm nod before placing the envelope on my desk. "I've been waiting until the right moment." "What is this?" "Documents your father insisted I protect." I opened the envelope carefully. Signed agreements, original ownership records, early intellectual property filings. Every page carried my signature, alongside Olivia's. Margaret gently tapped the top document. "These prove you were the original architect behind several core business assets." I stared at the papers, then at her. She offered one final sentence before the weight of the truth settled across the room. "I don't believe Olivia knows these exist." Suddenly, everything was about to change. Margaret waited until I finished reading every page. The office had become so quiet that I could hear the clock on the wall. I lifted another document from the stack. "This can't be right." "It is." She slid a pair of reading glasses across the desk. Read the signatures again. My name stood beside Olivia's on every important agreement from the company's earliest days. The first business plan, the ownership structure, the intellectual property filings, the licensing documents. Ideas I had created were legally recognized from the beginning. They had never disappeared. They had simply been forgotten. Margaret folded her hands. Your father worried this day might come. He never mentioned these papers. He hoped he never needed to. A sad smile crossed her face. He believed your marriage would always be stronger than business. I lowered my eyes to the documents. So had I. 2 days later, Margaret arranged a private meeting with Olivia. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. Even my phone rang. Grace's name appeared. You've heard. Heard what? Olivia spent almost an hour in Margaret's office. And she walked out carrying those files. Grace paused. I've never seen someone look so lost. I leaned back in my chair. There was no excitement inside me. No feeling of victory. Only the strange weight that comes when the truth finally catches up with someone. The next morning, another voicemail arrived. Her voice sounded different. Not rushed. Not confident. Just tired. Ethan, I found the documents. A shaky breath followed. You built so much more than I ever realized. The recording stopped. I placed my phone face down. Some apologies arrived years too late. Business kept moving forward. My calendar filled another week in advance. Daniel stopped by after finishing a client meeting. He noticed the untouched voicemail notification on my screen. You haven't called her back. I don't know what I'd say. You don't owe anyone a conversation before you're ready. I know. He rested one hand on the back of the chair. Don't confuse kindness with obligation. Those words stayed with me after he left. For years I had believed saying yes made me a good husband. Maybe it had only made me easy to overlook. News from Olivia's company became impossible to ignore. Former employees reached out almost every day. One accountant asked if we could meet for lunch. We chose a quiet diner across town. She stirred her coffee without drinking it. I resigned yesterday. I'm sorry to hear that. I couldn't stay. What happened? She opened a folder. Rows of numbers covered every page. Ryan approved contracts that made no sense. I studied the reports. Payments sent to companies with almost no history. Consulting fees far above market value. Projects that existed only on paper. He told everyone these deals would bring long-term growth. She shook her head. They only helped people connected to him. You reported this? Several times. And her laugh carried no humor. Nobody questioned him. I already knew why. Olivia had trusted confidence more than character. Within another week, the board launched an internal review. Clients heard the rumors. Investors became nervous. The company that once stood on steady ground suddenly struggled to keep its balance. Not because I convinced anyone to leave. I never called a single client asking them to follow me. They made their own decisions. Trust had started disappearing. Once that happens, contracts become pieces of paper. Nothing more. Late one afternoon, Daniel stopped by with unexpected news. You remember Mason Technologies? One of Olivia's biggest clients. They ended their agreement this morning. I set my pen down. What? They asked one question during the final meeting. He leaned forward. If Ethan isn't part of your strategy anymore, who is protecting our future? I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say. Respect cannot be replaced with a new title. That evening, my phone lit up again. Another message from Olivia. Please. 5 minutes. A second message arrived before I could lock the screen. I'm not asking about the company anymore. Then another. I'm asking about us. My thumb hovered above the keyboard. Nothing came. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because I still didn't know whether talking would help either of us. A few days later, I walked into a meeting with a new client. Halfway through the presentation, the receptionist knocked gently. Someone's here to see you. I have another 30 minutes. She says she'll wait. The meeting ended successfully. As I stepped into the lobby, I stopped walking. Olivia sat alone by the window. No expensive suit. No confident smile. No assistant carrying a tablet. She looked smaller somehow. She stood slowly. I wasn't sure you'd come out. I had work. I know. Her hands stayed folded together. Almost nervous. I've been reading old files every night. I remained quiet. I found your notes. She swallowed carefully. The handwriting on every important project. Another pause. It was yours. It always was. Her eyes became glossy. I never noticed. You stopped looking. She nodded once, unable to argue. The receptionist quietly walked away, giving us privacy. Olivia reached in her bag. I brought something. She placed a folder on the table between us. Inside were copies of my original business plans. Every page now carried sticky notes written in her handwriting. Dates, questions, realizations. She had been searching through years of history. I thought Ryan created those recovery plans. I know. I believed every presentation belonged to him. I know. Her shoulders dropped. I trusted the wrong person. The words sounded painfully honest. Not because Ryan had fooled her, because she finally understood she had stopped trusting me long before he arrived. I fired him. The sentence hung in the air. The investigation proved everything. She stared down at the folder. He manipulated contracts. I heard. I ignored warning signs. Another breath. I kept defending him. The lobby felt strangely peaceful despite everything. No shouting. No accusations. Just two people facing the truth they could no longer avoid. I kept waiting for you to fight with me. A weak smile appeared on my face. I spent years fighting for us. I know that now. She stepped closer. Not enough to touch me. Just enough to let honesty replace distance. I don't expect forgiveness today. I appreciate that. I only wanted you to know. Her voice cracked before she finished. I finally understand what I lost. Those words reached somewhere deep inside me. Not because they erased the past, because they confirmed I hadn't imagined it. I really had loved her. I really had carried more than she ever knew. My pain had been real. So had my value. After she left, Grace found me sitting alone in my office. You okay? I think so. You don't sound angry. I'm not. Happy. I looked toward the window where Olivia's car disappeared into traffic. No. So what are you? I took a long breath. Finished chasing approval. Grace smiled quietly. That's a bigger victory than revenge. She was right. Watching Olivia struggle didn't heal me. Her regret couldn't return the years we had already lost. The only thing that truly changed my life was becoming someone who no longer measured his worth through her eyes. The office lights were almost off when the receptionist knocked one final time. Sorry, she glanced toward the entrance. Someone came back. Curious, I walked into the lobby. Olivia stood outside the glass doors. Rain covered the sidewalk behind her. She wasn't holding business files this time. She held our old wedding photo against her chest. When our eyes met, she lifted it carefully. I found this after you left. Her fingers trembled around the frame. Before everything becomes permanent, a fragile breath escaped her. Will you give me one final conversation? Rain tapped softly against the office windows. Olivia still stood outside, holding our old wedding photo. The frame looked worn around the edges, just like the life we had built together. I unlocked the glass door. Come in. She stepped inside carefully, almost like a stranger entering someone else's home. Neither of us rushed to speak. Some moments deserve quiet before words. My office felt different from the house we once shared. There were no wedding pictures, no expensive decorations, only books, client files, and a small plant Grace had insisted would survive even if I forgot to water it. Olivia noticed everything. You made a life here. I'm trying. Her fingers stayed wrapped around the picture frame. I almost didn't come. What changed your mind? She lowered the frame onto my desk. I realized this was my last chance to tell the truth. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She simply sat across from me and took a slow breath. I've spent weeks looking through old emails. I stayed quiet. I found your notes on almost every project. Another pause. The ideas I praised in meetings. Her voice became softer. They were yours. I nodded once. They always were. She closed her eyes for a moment. I kept searching for someone to blame. Her hands folded together. Ryan. My career. The pressure. She slowly shook her head. The truth was much harder. I waited. It was me. The room remained still. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. I stopped seeing you. Those words hurt more than any argument ever could. You were always there. She smiled sadly. And because you were always there, I started believing you always would be. I understood exactly what she meant. My loyalty had become ordinary. My sacrifices had become expected. My love had become invisible. She reached into her bag and placed another folder beside the wedding photo. The board accepted my resignation yesterday. That surprised me. You stepped down? I had to. What about the company? It needs someone people can trust. A weak laugh escaped her. Right now, that isn't me. There was no bitterness in her voice, only acceptance. Sometimes the hardest punishment is seeing yourself clearly. She looked around the office again. I drove past our old house yesterday. I listened quietly. The dining room is still there. A tiny smile touched her face before fading. I kept thinking about those cold dinners. So did I. I thought you were being patient. I was. I never realized you were waiting for me. Those words settled between us. Not to reopen old wounds. To finally name them. She looked directly at me. What did it feel like? I took a slow breath. How could I explain years of disappearing without using anger? I stopped recognizing myself. Her eyes never left mine. I would wake up thinking about your meetings. I planned your presentations. I solved your crises. I celebrated every victory. I rested my hands on the desk. Then I'd walk into a room and people treated me like someone who worked for you. She lowered her head. I thought if I loved you enough, eventually you'd remember who I was. Another quiet moment passed. When that didn't happen, I started forgetting too. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. I read your message. She reached for her phone. The one about dinner. The screen lit up. There it was. Still unread until recently. Dinner's ready. Drive safely. I don't know why I ignored it. You were busy. No. She shook her head firmly. I made being busy an excuse. She locked the phone. I chose work over us. There was nothing left to argue about. She had already spoken the truth. The following week, we met one final time. Not in my office. At our lawyer's conference room. The divorce papers rested between us. Simple documents. Simple signatures. Nothing about them showed how many memories they carried. The lawyer explained each page. Neither of us interrupted. When the pen reached my hand, I paused. Not because I doubted the decision, because I wanted to honor what our marriage had once been. Then I signed. Olivia quietly added her signature beneath mine. The lawyer gathered the papers. It's complete. Those two words closed a chapter of my life. Outside the building, Olivia stopped beside the courthouse steps. I don't expect another chance. You don't have to. I only hope one day you remember the good years too. I will. She looked relieved. I was afraid I'd taken those from you. No. I smiled gently. You can't erase every good memory just because the ending hurts. She nodded. Thank you. She turned toward her car. Halfway there, she looked back. I hope your future is everything I should have helped you build. Then she left. Not as my wife. Not as my enemy. Just someone whose path no longer matched mine. Months passed. The seasons changed. So did I. My small consulting office moved into a larger space. Not because I chased rapid growth. Because clients kept returning. Trust spread quietly. One recommendation became another. Success built itself one honest conversation at a time. Daniel remained one of my closest clients. Grace became my business partner after refusing to accept the title of assistant. We're equals. I know. You'd better. Our laughter echoed through the office. It sounded natural, unforced. Life had started making room for joy again. News about Olivia reached me only occasionally. She never returned as CEO. Instead, she accepted a smaller role at a nonprofit organization that helped young business owners avoid the mistakes she had made. When I heard that, I smiled. Not because she had fallen, because she had chosen to grow. Real change isn't measured by titles. It's measured by humility. One afternoon, Margaret stopped by with coffee. She looked around the busy office. Your father would be proud. I hope so. He believed success was never about money. She glanced toward my employees working together. It was always about character. Those words reminded me how far I had come. Years earlier, I had measured my worth through Olivia's smile. Now, I measured it through my own choices. That felt much healthier. A few weeks later, I returned to the courthouse for one last document. The clerk handed me the final certified copy of the divorce order. I thanked her and walked outside. Bright sunlight covered the steps. People hurried in every direction, some beginning marriages, others ending them. Life kept moving. My phone vibrated. An old contact appeared during a backup notification. Olivia Carter. I stared at the name for several seconds. No anger remained. No hope remained either. Only acceptance. My thumb touched the screen. Delete contact? I pressed yes. The name disappeared. So did the last reason to keep looking backward. I slipped the phone in my pocket and lifted my face toward the warm sunlight. Peace had arrived quietly. Not through revenge. Not through watching someone else suffer. It came from choosing myself without becoming cruel. It came from telling the truth without losing my kindness. It came from learning that love should never require me to disappear. The future stretched ahead, wide open and uncertain. This time, every step belonged to me, and with a steady heart, I walked toward the life I had finally chosen.